Now, on a previous program, contributor Jonathan Cherry told us about the increased use of a concept called projection mapping. Well, the concept has now been used by the advertising agency DDB South Africa to communicate a new chewing gum product to young South Africans. The campaign had three main elements: television, online and experiential. It was launched with TV ads driving young South Africans to a customized online destination where they could create their own 3D projection and then have their work projected onto a building of their choice in a city of their choice on the date of their choice. I'm told this was the first time that live user-generated 3D projection mapping has ever been done in South Africa. So here is the project in a nutshell.
The campaign kicked off with a series of television ads driving people to the 5Gum Experience website, where, for the first time ever, we gave people across South Africa and the world the ability to create their own personalized building projections, share them, and have them projected onto a building of their choice in a city of their choice on a date of their choice. The response was enormous as young people across South Africa and the rest of the world started creating, sharing, and talking. The campaign exploded as thousands of projections began to be created. The most popular projections shared were then projected live on buildings in Johannesburg and Cape Town, with the users who created them invited down to see their creations in all their glory. iPads also gave people the ability to control the projections in real time. Everyone whose projection had been chosen was given 4 tickets to an exclusive underground user-curated experience featuring the genius of Etienne de Gracy's live show and other sensory stimulating experiences. Tickets were shareable and became a desperately valuable commodity. 5Gum at the very center of it all. True social creativity at work. People from across the world continue to create their own projections and stimulate their senses with 5Gum.
All right, let's stay with new marketing solutions. And South Africa has been listed as one of the most socially engaged nations in the world when it comes to tourism promotion. The person behind the success is William Price, who is Global Manager for e-marketing at South African Tourism. He spearheads the social media strategy. He joined us a little earlier in the week. So the top 10 most socially engaged nations, obviously a nice accolade for South Africa, but what exactly does it mean?
Well, what it means is that we're really paying attention to social media, and we're trying to engage with the users in a way that they are familiar with, and we're also trying to give them the opportunity to experience South Africa, first in the social media spaces, and then hopefully their peers would do the job of convincing them to come. So it's not just about us doing the brand awareness job, it's really trying to encourage the engagement and doing specific engagement within the appropriate platforms.
And shaping word-of-mouth marketing. From this strategy comes the word-of-mouth output that you're hoping for.
That's right. And beyond word-of-mouth, we're really trying to get people not just to be talking about our brand and the experience that they have in South Africa, but really to go that next step, which is the advocacy step, which is really convincing people. So when people talk about travel, travel is really aspirational. So you take on a whole different body language when you talk about where you've been and what you've done. Similarly, when you talk about where you want to go and what you want to do. So that's really the type of essence that we're trying to get people to talk about when considering traveling and holiday. We want them to think about.
How do you spark the conversation?
Well, fortunately, we have a great destination. It really isn't difficult for us to sell South Africa. And because of the awareness that we now have, the real trick is turning that awareness into something that is tangible and that gets people not just to talk about it, but to actually create the desire for them to want to come. So the experiences that we've been able to expose audiences to, thanks to the Soccer World Cup, It wasn't just about soccer. Now people are starting to think about South Africa differently, and therefore we need to give them as much information, as you say, seed the conversation as much as possible.
Do you think we've capitalised sufficiently on the Soccer World Cup? There is a school of thought, and it's a school of thought that I subscribe to, that says we could have done a whole lot more. In fact, we've actually failed on that front.
I think doing a whole lot more really is a broad, there are obviously going to be lots of different things we could have done better, and I think for us the key was delivering a successful World Cup, and I think that was really the thing that blew people away. Taking it from here and going forward, that's really where a lot of the people need to really kind of expand their thinking and think out of the box, to quote a very poor cliche. But really, we need to find ways that we can leverage and build on top of the exposure. And there are going to be ways that business can do it, that tourism can do it, that even small local enterprise can do it. And those are the really things for us, because we now have this opportunity that we didn't have before.
Typically, what type of invitation or pointer would you put onto a Twitter feed or onto a Facebook page?
Well, we've seen that Twitter and Facebook are two very different environments, and we have to treat them differently. So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach in terms of what we do and how we try and seed conversation. What we see works very well in Twitter, especially in our local messaging, is that people want an idea of where to go and what they could expect to find there. But most importantly, we have to include a price point. So if we don't give the user some means to engage and actually kind of like click here to buy now, if we don't have that built into our messaging, then we just see the messaging becomes one more of the gazillion tweets out there. So we've seen that the price point really is one of the key things that we need to communicate. Facebook is all about getting people to actually start liking and sharing information, what they did when they were there, their images, their take on the experience, and what they brought out of it. And that's really the difference between how we would look at a Facebook versus a Twitter. So for us, the messaging has to be very specifically targeted to an outcome that we basically define as success.
Talk to me about the risk. Managing user-generated content is always difficult. What happens if someone has a bad experience? And it happens.
Well, our experience has been that we have to address it. We can't ignore it. We can't kind of like throw a lot of positive stuff over it and hope for it to go away. What we find is that the users, when they see us engaging and see us asking, well, sorry to hear that you had a bad time. What could we do to help you? What was it? Who was it? When was it? What happens is people then very quickly start to see, hang on, these guys are taking it seriously, and they actually are willing to engage, as opposed to kind of just withdrawing and not saying anything. So that's been one of the key insights for us, is that don't just let it be said and don't say anything about it. But more importantly, as far as user-generated content goes, there's always going to be good content, mediocre content, and just plain bad content. So what we try and do is we try and build it as much as possible where we can, and one of the things that we try and do is kind of shepherd those conversations. So when people are saying things that may have been kind of neutral to start off with, we try and encourage them and engage with them in a way that it ends up being something that they actually are quite upbeat and positive about.
But you've got to acknowledge their problem up front. You can't soft soap this.
Correct.
Yeah. Your key performance area, whatever you call it these days, would be to convert this conversation into actual visitors. How do you know that's happening?
Very good question. The biggest thing for us is to be able to get people to talk about experience, because it's the experience that's tangible enough for us to be able to try and sell to them and have them included into their itineraries. From there, the job for us is not just to take the content that we use to inform and inspire, but we have to make the content engaging enough to convince them to come. When they've actually been convinced to come, we need to funnel and channel them to a place where they can actually make the purchase.
Right, William, a final question then. Top 10 most socially engaged destinations, thumbs up. Fourth place, but we are way behind Australia and New Zealand, and that sticks in the throat, as well as Spain. What are those three countries doing right? What can we learn from them?
I think the first thing is, when we look at that ranking, it's really just looking mostly around the Facebook engagement. So it's really a one-dimensional kind of ranking. What they are doing better than what we are is, first, they've got a huge amount of budget that they've been throwing around at things. For us, leading up to Soccer World Cup and a few other things, there have been specific focuses that we need to pay attention to. There's a huge amount of work that we need to do to kind of close the gap on our competitors. It's not because we are a better destination or because we have less to offer. It really has more to do with how we embrace the digital medium and how we can push that further, because it's really a group effort. It won't just be left up to one person in South African tourism to make sure that we can close that gap. It really is the entire travel trade in South Africa that needs to embrace digital to make that gap smaller.
All right, so I hope your bosses are listening, because you need more money, don't you?
Thank you.
William Price, the Global Manager, E-Marketing at SA Tourism, thank you so much for joining us.
Lovely, thank you.
Coming up on Mags on Media, how a major bank is trying to break into the so-called entry-level market. It's a tough call when its competitors have been there for a long time.